I'm hearing like you're bringing millions of dollars to the table, and I'm trying to figure out what happened. Just because there's a group of people who, have decided that they only value this specific approach to, saying having an impact on social justice doesn't necessarily mean that's the only way for you to participate in having an impact on social justice.
There are bonding requirements. There are policies at the federal level that do put a limit, a glass ceiling on a lot of opportunities for Black and brown businesses. I'm more concerned with what they're doing. Okay, so you're passionate about racial justice. Well, what have you done that speaks to that? And if there's nothing, then those passions are not.
Well, welcome, greetings and salutations, good people. My name is Ernest III. Welcome to the Pancakes From Scratch Podcast, where I love to have good conversations with good people doing good things. I got my guy, Robert Harper, the one and only, with me today. How you doing, brother?
What's good?
Man, all is well, man. I see you got the what we call that chocolate. You got the chocolate truffle. What you got on with the soup? What color is this?
Man, it looked brown on here, but it's maroon, I swear.
Okay, all right. Style it up a little bit. Not mad at you. It's all good, man. It's all good.
Chocolate truffle. They got me thinking of Kevin Hart, chocolate dropper.
Hey, listen, I just appreciate you making time, man. I know we had to reschedule and make it happen. You got a lot of good things going, man. I'm excited for you. Congratulations, brother.
Hey, look, I appreciate it. Glad to have a support system, especially my frat brothers like you and friends and family, because those closest to you know the struggles that you went through between them major announcements. And it's like, okay, you might have saw that promotion, but you didn't see the trials and tribulations that led to it. So I appreciate you.
Listen, I know exactly how that go, man. I know exactly how that go. What's the role that they got you in now?
Yeah, so I'm at META and I'm our Senior Director of Business Consulting, which is a huge opportunity because it oversees META's largest department, which is our business consultancy. They are that first point of contact for a lot of our BIPOC businesses, and they're typically the more intimate interaction with our clients. And that also oversees the department that I was overseeing the past year, which is supplier development / supplier diversity, connecting our clients to Fortune 500 multimillion-dollar contracts, which was super exciting. Got some of our clients some of their first Fortune 500 contracts, which was impactful. And I love to be able to see the fruit of your labor, which is few and far between when you talk about contract attainment. So that work was fun, but it's something I've been doing for the past 7 years. And I'm excited for this business consulting role because I get to, lead an entire team and also have, people that can support the work that I was doing over the past year.
That's it. I love it, man. Well, that's major. Like I said, congratulations. Excited to see how things come together for you. You're going to have to tell us a little bit more about all that. I'm hearing millions. I'm hearing, major contracts. So we're going to have to get into that a little bit.
All right. We're back
before we do, though, man, I like to start the conversation with just, man, what's giving you energy this week, man? What's pushing you through?
Energy this week. Like I mentioned to you briefly, I'm I'm one of them New Year's resolutions where I'm trying to have a new consistent yoga, hot yoga, 6 a.m. to start my morning, which has been real, like rejuvenating. It sounds miserable. It feels miserable when you got to shovel out, dig out to get to the gym. And if you're somebody like me, like I play football, so I'm used to getting there and lifting weights, moving something heavy. You want me to get up early and go stretch and be sweating?
It's a stretch. It's a stretch.
But that's been energizing. It's been keeping me relaxed. It's been challenging me to, I always say be comfortable being uncomfortable, that's high yoga in a nutshell. And it makes me feel stronger when I get to my lifts and things like that. So my gym regimen has been really energizing me to focus on myself physically, mentally, and then professionally too.
Dope, man. Dope. I love it. I love it. I did some yoga. I don't think I tried the hot yoga situation. I've heard about it, but
It's
that sounds
different.
like a different level.
It's harder, but at the same time, I like it more because it's more of a like a workout. Like you got some real light, maybe 5 to 8 pound dumbbells. You doing little kind of mini hit workouts in between the yoga movements, which makes me a little bit more excited about it because if I was just doing yoga movements, I'm probably not going to be as engaged.
Yeah. You can only hold that warrior pose for so long. And it's
Right.
like, all right, let's move on. No, that's what's up though, man. Well, cool. I'm glad to hear you got something bringing you energy, something bringing you good health. That's a good look. So one of the first questions that I have, and I think, we brushed over it briefly, but I want you to dig in on when you reflect on some of your biggest challenges, right? Whether that's personal, professional, is there one that stands out as something that helped shape who you become, like as a person, as a professional?
Yeah. For me, it's all of the uncertainty and instability that I dealt with growing up. So me and my brother Joanne, we sat down one day and wrote down each of the addresses that we lived at, and it was over 20. We lived at more than 23 addresses by the time we graduated high school. And doing some of that sociological research, you find that each relocation decreases a child's chance of graduating from high school, and let alone college or getting a master's. So that's one of those things you look back on and you're like, people are, oh, how did you power through, or what did you do differently? And I think it's really finding energy and being motivated by those things, and also being comfortable being unstable. Sometimes, throughout your career or your involvement in the community or your relationships or whatever it is, you get into a conversation or a situation where you feel uncomfortable and you don't know what's going to happen next. A lot of people every day die as a result of some of these unstable conditions. A lot of people are incarcerated because of these issues. A lot of people are, dealing with serious mental health issues because of some of the circumstances that I came up in. And so looking back and trying to find energy and positivity from those things has a direct translation to how I approach my work and approach my personal relationships and stuff.
Yeah, man. No, that's
And I know we can talk more later about the professional challenges, but I think that those experiences growing up prepared me for the ones that I've faced over my career.
No, absolutely. That's major, man. Like, to your point about being able to manage the instability and, sort of working your way through that experience, that stuff is super valuable, right? As you come into adulthood and you move into markets, because at the end of the day, a lot of adults are going to experience that transition from place to place as you grow into being more established. I know, my first couple years out of college, I moved around. You hear me? Like, it was apartment to apartment,
Couches and
surfing.
everything.
Yeah, man, just trying to figure it out. And if that's not an experience that you can, navigate and, keep yourself centered, it can wear you down. It can wear you down quickly. And then that's just another barrier to finding your way into any level of professional achievement. So yeah, man, it's definitely a gift and a curse.
The other thing I would add too is it's about the finding the right output with that kind of energy or those situations. So for me, growing up, when you had all these things going on at home, you find other places to go. And for me, that looked like singing in choir, joining a musical, doing football, trying basketball. I won't say doing basketball, running track, it's just all these things like that I did growing up that I feel like really helped me connect, do what I do now. I'm a professional, which is connect with people from different backgrounds and people that you don't agree with politically, and people who have, you know, different real lived experiences. And that kind of really, I think when I look back of why do I connect with, you know, all kinds of entrepreneurs and politicians and business folks that I work with, it's because of those different interactions that I had growing up. Some people never had those.
That's heavy. That's heavy,
Yeah,
man.
so
It's
I say
like,
now, even as a person that hires people now, one of the first things I do, which I don't know what the formal HR practice would be, but when I review resumes, the first thing I look at is people's community engagement, their extracurriculars. What'd you do in your spare time? I don't even want to know what degree you got, where you last worked. First section I go is community involvement or extracurriculars, because if you're applying to a job that has a social justice lens and you haven't been surrounding yourself with diverse communities your entire life, then I almost swore on the podcast, but I'm not, you know, I'm gonna be deterred by that for sure. And so, yeah, finding different ways to be involved. And one of my mentors always said, you can't serve Black people if you don't love Black people. And there's a lot of people that call themselves allies, and then you look at their circle or their everyday interactions or who they're hanging out with on the weekends, and you're like, I saw you at that Black Lives Matter protest a few years back, but I mean, since I haven't seen no intentional change in your day-to-day interactions. And that makes me question how much of an advocate for me are you?
yeah, man. No, I'm definitely with you on that. I heard a quote that still sticks with me to this day, man. It was Adair Mosley is who I heard say it. I don't know where he got it from, but it was like, you say you care about the homeless people, so tell me their names. And that stuck with me. I'm like, woo, because people maybe out here serving and they not really engaging, not really connecting, because the care isn't really there. And it's critical, man.
Yeah.
It's absolutely critical.
That's why a lot of people say, you know, I'm passionate about blank. That's such a common theme in this world of like cancel culture and, you know, social justice awareness. I'm less concerned with what people are passionate about. I'm more concerned with what they're doing. Okay, so you're passionate about racial justice. Well, what have you done that speaks to that? And if there's nothing, then those passions are not, you know, back in the day, old Rob would have been like, oh, you passionate about racial justice? I love you. Give me a hug.
That's it.
Now when people say that, I'm like, okay, so tell me more.
Show me.
Right, show me.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
That's super real, man. You about to have everybody updating their resume. He said extracurricular. Wait a minute.
Ooh, passionate about delete. For real.
It's really real, man. It's really real. But I think it's a smart approach. You know, whatever the HR, you know, regulations say, like, nah, if I want to know what you're truly passionate about, there's going to be evidence of it. Right. So what do I see that shows me where your concern is, where your heart is, so that I have an understanding of who you are, and who I'm inviting into this organization? Because that's a important role, to be the person that makes that decision about who the people are involved in the work that you're doing.
100%.
It's big, man. It's big.
And we as people got to do a better job of calling out those people in our circles too that aren't living up to those passions, because we know them. You know, I've got friends that, you know, are successful in their careers, and I know without a doubt that they have that fire in them to make a difference, to be involved in social justice, but it's not showing up really in their day-to-day as much as it should. And I've had some of those tough conversations with many of my friends, like, hey, because I would expect them to do the same thing for me. Like, if I kept telling you that I was passionate about a problem and I wasn't carving out time to be more invested in that, then I would hope that you would say something to me.
That's real, man. Listen, if you don't have friends who hold you accountable, do you really have friends? Let's look at it and be honest with ourselves about what that means. If my
Mhm.
friends can't give me a call, tap me on the shoulder about a decision that I made or a move I made, then I'm not really interested in having friends. I'm interested in having yes men, and that's a different
Right.
experience. So
Yeah. And I don't want to get like too much into, frat life because I only been in it two years, but I really do appreciate, our frat brothers pushing me to be more involved in some of those things outside of work. And so, in the work that I do in the social action, it's like, okay, you said that you wanted to commit to doing this. Okay, so let's start getting some concrete events going. And I'm
mhm,
still working to increase the number of events that we have, but still committing to being involved and planning and actually executing events that speak to those passions. Because there's a lot of things that we care about, but in the world of a 9 to 5, we just don't have time for all of them. Like
and
I studied criminal justice growing up and super passionate about criminal justice reform. But the reality of it is I now do economic justice work and do a lot of youth development work, but not as much criminal justice. But I can still influence that from my position, in the community and organize, a panel discussion of politicians to talk about criminal justice issues or, those types of things. You always have an ability to influence.
absolutely. And you find the way that works for you to be engaged, right? Just because there's a group of people who, have decided that they only value this specific approach to, saying having an impact on social justice doesn't necessarily mean that's the only way for you to participate in having an impact on social justice. It's your responsibility to figure out if that's something that you actually care about, is something that you have a passion for, right? It's up to you to decide how that shows up in your life. You don't have to, the evidence doesn't have to be the evidence that I would value. The evidence just has to be something that you value.
Hmm. Yeah, it's on your own terms.
That's it, man. That's it. So the work that you're doing now in this whole economic justice world, like what is that? Fill us in, man. You're doing, it's what I'm hearing is like business moves. I'm hearing like you're bringing millions of dollars to the table, and I'm trying to figure out what happened. What's going
Yeah.
on?
What happened? How did we make that happen?
Right.
Um, for sure. I mean, one of the blessings that I think I had growing up, well, not growing up, I mean, in college really, was to be a Page Scholar. And Alan Page's foundation really focused around, not even on a cliche, it's focused around being in the community. Each scholar has to have an internship, or not an internship, a volunteer opportunity, community service project where you're in the community and you're mentoring or tutoring young Black and Brown kids in the community. And, I did that throughout college and throughout grad school, where, and the scholarship isn't, it's not about to put you through school, but, that $2,000 to $3,000 could be that gap aid that forces a lot of people to drop out.
Yeah.
And then if you're lucky enough to go to an institution like Augsburg that matched it, then you got, $6,000, which is clutch. But again, it wasn't about the money. It was mentoring and having mentees who to this day reach out to me. One of them sent me, like, can you put in and I hadn't heard from him in a while. And I know we can all do a better job of being more consistently in touch with our mentees, but he still saw me as someone that he could reach out to for a letter of recommendation. And I wrote it. And, he ultimately got the position, which I'm like, wow, it's coming full circle. But that commitment to being in the community, having mentees, that desire to serve and to develop those who are coming up in situations or circumstances that I can relate to, that's where I got to business development. People are always like, how did you get into business? And I'm like, it's pretty random, honestly. I can, true story, I interviewed at the University of Minnesota for a youth development program leader, the Junior Entrepreneurs in Minnesota program,
Okay.
where we were based at URock over in North Minneapolis, off Penn and Plymouth, and mostly Black kids in the program. And it was a program that was looking at getting cut by the U of M because we were mostly a supplier diversity function, not really supposed to be doing youth development work. But I raised over $350,000 to save the program because I saw value in it. And, even this year, one of our biggest entrepreneurs who are doing more than 10 million in revenue this year, he brought his son to the meeting, and his son was one of the kids that I mentored through the youth development junior entrepreneurship program at the University of Minnesota. And he's now a senior at the university, or at St. Thomas. I don't know if they're University of St. Thomas now or whatever. They're D1 now. So he's a senior on the football team, and he's an entrepreneur. He has a business. And it's just like, it makes you feel like you made a difference. It gives me a concrete proof that if I hadn't raised those funds, if I had let the program get eliminated, if I as a Black man wasn't a role model that led the program to these youth, maybe he doesn't start that business. Maybe he doesn't go to St. Thomas. Maybe he does, but it makes you, it affirms you that, you had an impact or influence. No, so fast forward, interviewed for that role. I got that role, but Daryl, who's one of my greatest mentors, who hired me for that role, he goes, it really sounds like you'd be a good fit for our supplier diversity manager opening. And I'm sitting there fresh out of college. This is the summer right after I graduated, got a sociology and criminal justice degree. Don't know what I'm going to do with it. Just got offered a youth development program leader role where I was probably making $19, $20 an hour, which I thought was great. And here you are offering me a full-time salary with benefits job to do supplier diversity, which I didn't know what the hell that was. But then when I started to do some research, I said, oh, I guess I really was interviewing for this role, because I talked about my commitment to community. I talked about my ability to advocate for those who are historically underrepresented. I talked about an ability to connect with and ultimately influence systems that would create a more positive outcome for that young person. And that directly translates to supplier diversity, which is me advocating for business owners who are well established. These are folks who are operating, most of them over $1 million in revenue companies. They've been in business for years. They might be one of the best painters or electricians or architects or furniture distributors. They might be one of the best restaurants. But when it comes to getting contracts with these Fortune 500s, you got to be able to speak the language of a corporate person. You got to be able to have a procurement person see you as an added value when they could most times find a white majority owned company that would do the job for pennies on the dollar because of the historical wealth accumulation of other white owned businesses that have been around longer and their families. And so some of those systemic barriers that led to many of our entrepreneurs not having access to wealth accumulation, which comes in the form of access to capital, access to grants, and we do that at META for the last 51 years, where we give loans to Black and brown people who might otherwise have not been able to get it from a mainstream bank. And people don't really understand how the wealth gap persists and some of these systemic barriers, but it's very true and very concrete when you look at the interest rates that are being offered to Black and brown people at Wells Fargo and at US Bank and I guess I shouldn't name some of the folks we work with, but the rates that they're getting offered from these banks compared to, how they're able to get that loan quickly in North Minneapolis at a community bank. So we're a community development financial institution, a CDFI. And in addition to that access to capital piece, it's helping them get contracts, because most folks don't know. After a Black-owned business or minority-owned business gets to $1 million in revenue, a lot of them fail between 1 million and 3, because we haven't really learned how to manage all that money. Some of the biggest businesses, most successful business people that we have in our network are people that just know how to hustle, right? They've been doing it since they were a kid, and they knew how to hustle. And they built a multi-million-dollar business, but they didn't know how to manage all those dollars. They didn't have this, generations of family that they could lean on, the risk that they could take on. So there's all these reasons that they get to this point. And my job is to help them get through the door, to put them in the room with these Fortune 500 execs who, and not even execs, middle managers who are making decisions every day and they're not really understanding, the altitude of the power that they have. It's me helping them understand that, hey, you can really affect change. You can really help us close the wealth gap, because when we put all of our work together from a corporate perspective, in my opinion, that's going to close the wealth gap a lot faster than a lot of other things. We're not getting reparations anytime soon. And when I was in grad school, I told Dr. Myers, who was the only Black tenured professor in my graduate program, I told him, so what you want to write your thesis on? I'm like, reparations, because I came into this policy program like, yo, we about to make this dramatic change. And he was like, let me just humble you real quick, because he knew the work that I was doing. He was like, look, there are much more concrete, practical, and feasible policy changes that I can affect, which I've continued to do from this role and then as a consultant too. But that's a long-winded way of saying, these are the ways, or these are the types of programs and practices that I influence and lead out in the community to make sure that those who don't have access to these types of programs, who may not know about it, have an opportunity. And so, I've helped many of some of our friends and some of the people that we recognize in the Twin Cities community to take a chance on our organization and to trust that my leadership will give them an opportunity that they haven't had before. And that's worked out for, not all of them, but it's worked out for some of them. And we try to shoot 100% from the line, but we know that's not gonna happen.
That's just not the case. That's not how it goes. Right. But it's it's about putting the energy, the effort, and intentionality into it, to be able to make that difference. I think it's major, man. This is, I think it's a gem just to realize that businesses that hit that $1 million mark, because for a lot of us, like, $1 million is Mecca, right? It's like, I want to get my business going. I want to make $1 million. But that $1 to $3 million mark, that's dangerous territory. And I don't, it's one of those things where, you're looking at a mountaintop, you're from the valley, and you're trying to like get access to it without realizing what's up there. And so that's a bar, man, to make sure, as you go into business and you go into life with your ambitions, be aware of the fact that with new levels, there's new devils, new challenges, and new things that you'll have to overcome. Man.
And it's like about building a team. I just watched yesterday morning, I was at an award ceremony watching one of our Black-owned general contractors get an award from Minnesota's Association of General Contractors. He got most diverse business, or most successful diverse business of the year. And in his speech, he was talking about the importance of, he was like, they were like, how did you get to where you are this now? And he was like, it's about making a connection, building a relationship, and giving an opportunity. Whether you're talking about a procurement person giving a multi-million-dollar opportunity, or you in your day-to-day giving somebody an opportunity by deciding to start a conversation with them, deciding to want to get to know them. This could be at the gym, it could be in your, at work, it could be wherever in the community. But we all have an ability to influence. And I just, I'm really thankful that I found my own ability to influence through my internships and things like that. Because I remember in college, one of my mentors of the upturnships program, they were like, you have a really unique ability to influence. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Like, everybody wants to be a leader.
Use that.
Everybody wants to lead. Everybody wants to get things done. Like, nobody wants to hear about influencing. But then the older you get and the more experience you get in these like powerful systems and some tough situations, you find out that it's about influencing.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. It's about influencing, and I think especially in the Black community, it's about understanding the landscape, man. I get the sense that here's what I know. There's a scale of ownership that exists in the nation and in the world that we just don't have like a real perception of, right? Like, the number of industries that exist and the ways that they create impact and operate at scale is mind-boggling, right? And so for us, we get in the hustle mode, right? Like I got my thing going, it's gonna make money, I'm gonna make $1 million, and I'm beyond. And we don't realize like somebody out here owns the color orange, right? And like they just waiting for you to pick, you know what I'm saying, what type of vest you want to wear while you do your thing so they could get they check. We really gotta find a way as a community, as entrepreneurs, as individuals, we have to find a way to get the exposure to what's possible. Because as you get exposure to what's possible, more becomes possible for you. Right? Just the fact that we're having this conversation and you're exposing people to this idea of supplier diversity, like that, just that term is like somebody's ear peaked. Like, what is that? And like, how do I get in touch with a supplier diversity person? How do I get in touch with a procurement professional? Like, what does that even mean? These are new words, these are new concepts, new ideas. And as I'm somebody who's trying to start my business, or at least or elevate my business, I don't have exposure to these concepts. Like I'm way behind. There's a lot of learning that has to happen, man. So like, what are the pathways to get access to the information?
Yeah, it's tough because I think, what we're talking about right now is so high level. We're talking about multi-million dollars. We're talking about Fortune 500 companies. A lot of people are like, look, that ain't got nothing to do with me. Like, I'm just shopping at Target, right? But, we do have some say or influence over what's on the shelf at Target, or what developer is working on a new construction project in your community. One example that I can think of is I reached out to the school district from the high school that I went to, because most people don't know, but a lot of these first ring suburbs in the Twin Cities, the biggest economic engine of their communities is the school district. Like there isn't a corporation in, I was going to say Fridley, but Medtronic happens to be there. But like Columbia Heights, where I went to high school, there is no major corporation there. You got gas stations, little small local bars, dive bars, and the high school, middle school, and elementary schools. That school district is what I did some research, spent, I think it was over 60 million a year, something like that. That is more spending than any other company in the community. And if I lived in Columbia Heights, or if I went to Columbia Heights like I did, then I think we all have a responsibility to reach out to the people. In this case, I reached out to the superintendent and asked, I heard y'all are building a new gym for the basketball team. That's great. Did you ever think about, how that might be an opportunity for minority-owned biz contractors to be involved on the opportunity? And she said, oh my God, I never thought about that. And this is real. We have people that oversee multi-million-dollar functions, and they don't even recognize the power that they have. And it's not realistic to expect that they all do or will. Some of them will never get it, but it's on all of us who live in these communities, who go to church in these communities, to knock on some doors, to ask some people and some friends that we know that work here, a teacher, a friend who's a teacher in that district, they have some influence, they can schedule a meeting. And again, I'm not promising these huge outcomes. I'm just saying that if we all start to ask these questions and influence, there is some influence we can have. Here in Brooklyn Park, where I'm at, we just elected our first Black mayor, Hollis Winston. I'm excited about the things he can do, and I'm always asking, how can I help? How can I advocate for some policy changes? And some of our clients are currently working on contracts with the city of Brooklyn Park, so that's positive. And so I'm just, I believe that if each system started to really think about these things, and if each person who's a constituent of these institutions starts to hold them accountable, they'll change over time. I go to Lifetime to work out multiple times, 4 or 5 times a week. And I'm calling around asking their executives, what are you guys doing to invest in minority-owned businesses? Because your corporation is doing great And we love to see a local, was a small gym to start out with, started out in New Hope, in a strip mall. Now you open up these big, huge gyms across the country. Now you're at that magnitude where I'm gonna expect you to commit to making a difference.
No, that's
So,
real.
yeah, that's what I would say for people who are wondering how they can get in touch with some of these things we're talking about.
Yeah, it's just making the call. It's just being willing and open to have the conversation and like looking for the accountability, right? Like, and it's not necessarily saying like, hey, you don't have to, it's nothing you have to sell them on, right? Like they were already going to spend the money. Money's getting spent. They're going to do this thing. Like you said, you're building a gym. Like,
Right. Your tax dollars are being used for that gym regardless of whether or not you decide to participate in that action. Like it's going to happen. That's
so
why I always laugh when people say, I don't like politics, or are you Democrat or Republican? I don't have one. Like, I don't have an opinion. I'm like, that's cool. That's cute at first, but then we got to grow up and realize when somebody said you don't like politics, well, politics likes you. And like you just said, that gym is getting built and somebody's going to decide who gets that money. And what are you going to do to try and influence the outcome?
It's heavy, man. It's heavy. It's so
because people rely on your inaction. That's the older I get, the more I realize people depend on your inaction. When we talk about going to vote or whatever, people really, people. I was watching the Boys in Blue documentary about North Minneapolis and fallout of after the murder of George Floyd and their quarterback who was killed, which was crazy, but it was just, I was watching that thinking, how are we gonna make changes that people can understand? Because I remember in that documentary, people in the community kept asking City Councilman Jeremiah Ellison, what does that mean? Defund the police. What does that mean? Then what? And then he kept saying, if we don't do this and the status quo remains, they were like, well, what's the status quo? And that made me reflect to make sure that the way I'm communicating with people out in the community is something that's digestible, something that's understandable. Yeah, otherwise, you're just talking at them and you're almost as bad as, no, go ahead.
It's tough because when you're in it, right? Like this, it becomes like your whole life. Like, man, this is my whole world is this space of social justice, economic justice. And because I'm in this space, the jargon is all around me. Like the language of the industry is like how I communicate now. But for the people who have the intentional and like focused effort to be engaged with people because you care, now it puts you in a position to like recognize that gap. It's like, oh, this isn't language you use. All right, let's figure out how to help you understand what I'm talking about so we can get on the same page, because we want to move in the same direction. We can't understand each other. Mm-hmm. So we gotta be willing, like we have to be willing to like make the effort to work through a conversation that's gonna get us on the same page. We're not belittling one another. We're not accusing one another of anything. We're just trying to understand, what is it that you're saying? I want to get on the same page so that we can move forward, because to your point, there are people out here who are dependent on our inaction. They hope we don't do nothing. And they just gotta wait so they can be done with it. Right. But if we can be intentional and build a relationship so we can have the conversation, we can make something happen.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people watch all the protests and things that happened after George Floyd. They were at home thinking like, okay, well, they ain't gonna do nothing after this. They're just gonna tear up the streets and they're gonna go back home and it's gonna revert back to everything they was doing the same. And I just wonder, like, what if we all decided to do something? Like, that looks different for each person. It might be volunteering at this place, or it might be leading a protest over here. It might be starting a supplier diversity program at your job. It might be leading DEI training for those who aren't getting it. It could look like whatever. But if everybody did something, I'm insisting upon believing that that would get us to the world that we imagine, because sometimes you lose that motivation. I'm like, well, I can help us get all these contracts, but there are systems in place that just aren't going to get us there. There are bonding requirements. There are policies at the federal level that do put a limit, a glass ceiling on a lot of opportunities for Black and brown businesses. But I can't really be distracted or focused on some of those barriers. I got to be focused on what's possible and just hope that each interaction, each transaction builds on to the next, and then somebody else is going to pick up the torch and lead from there.
That's really real, man. When you think about all the stuff that you've done, like in your career, because it's like you've been in some like different places and spaces, right? Like, is there an opportunity that you had that you would say you're most grateful for?
Yeah. Last year, I was I lived in Las Vegas for a random 2 years, from 2020 to 2022. And a lot of people, even like some of my friends, are like, it don't seem like you were there because we were in a shutdown. Like, it was COVID, it was pandemic season. So I was just gone and appeared back in the Twin Cities in March of 2022. So it's just like, a lot of people saw the move. And then, but what a lot of people didn't see is, I didn't have a job lined up. Everything shut down. I was working for the state of Minnesota, but then I was in Nevada. So I'm looking for opportunities in Vegas. I'm putting in applications left and right. And I'm not getting any callbacks. Like, I'm sitting here like, you really start to question yourself. Like, is all that schooling that I just went through, I just got my master's from a top 10 policy school, all these accolades, and I got some solid experience leading and building successful programs. I couldn't get a call back. And so it's just like, you can understand and relate to all these people that are like, on unemployment. And people just like, well, go get a job. Well, sometimes it's not that easy. And if it was that hard for me, I can only imagine how hard it was for some people with lesser qualifications. So that situation happened, and I encourage people to move away from the place that they grew up at some point, whether if that's permanently, whether that's for 6 months, if it's for a year, 2 years, because you learn a lot about yourself when you're in a new place where nobody in the community knows you.
Yeah.
You got these words on a resume, but they're just words to them. They don't know about they don't really feel the impact of what your resume is speaking to. And they don't know you. So ultimately, you're not getting hired. And that's what I went through. Ultimately, I got a job with the University of Nevada, Reno, building a workforce development program. And workforce development was new to me. I still to this day don't know where one of our frat brothers, Dr. Ivory Lyles, he called me and gave me a job that I did not apply for. I didn't know exactly what it was. And I don't know where he got my resume, but I praise God that he came through with that phone call, because I was over there like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So I did that 12 months. It was only a 12-month contract, and he left. And again, I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm locked into a 15-month lease. So I'm, for the first time in my career, applied for unemployment. Now, luckily, I had started my consulting business that year. And so I was working on a major contract, writing the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise DBE goals for the Department of Transportation in Minnesota, which, long story short, helps us tell them what percent of their $4 billion should be spent with Black and brown people. Now, whether or not they actually spend it is one other problem that needs to be addressed. But I'm going to tell you, according to the economics and according to the availability of Black and brown businesses in the community, in these NAICS codes, this is the percent you should spend with them. So I was working on that project, but I got, my first big consulting check. I'm excited. Well, I spent all of that. I spent it all. Why? Because I was on unemployment, and I was just like, I still don't know what I'm going to do. But but God, like I'm one of the people where
Amen.
I'm not really gonna stress the situation. Sometimes you just in a situation, you don't really know how you got there. Some people are like, oh, how'd you get there? And I'm like,
Yeah.
what were you doing in that situation? And it's just like, you didn't expect to get there, you didn't expect that to happen, but it happened. So now what you gonna do? So ultimately, luckily, I was continuing to work on these contracts on my consulting line, which led to a phone call from Meta, where I'm currently at, and their
Yeah.
CEO saying, I want you to be the director of our supplier development program. And I said, that's great. Another job that I did not apply for. They always say you can look as hard as you want, but the things that God has for you are for you, and there's nothing you can even do to stop it. And so that's an example where I was like, wow, like, I got this opportunity. They're going to pay my relocation package. I'm moving back to the Twin Cities at perfect time. Like, I enjoy Vegas, but it's time to go. My career is not here. My future is not here. Got that role. Now ultimately got promoted this year, and it's been looking up ever since. But when you talked about my personal challenges and coming up and the instability and the uncertainty, that to me, I didn't realize that those were situations that made me into the man I am today until I had this situation last year where I was on unemployment. And most people on your social media and a lot of your associates, people who know you as this, successful, educated Black man who was doing good thing, they don't know that at that particular time you were unemployed and you didn't know where that next paycheck was coming from.
That's it.
And so, I'm just thankful that I transcended through all of those things. And I don't know, I know we're wrapping up, but I don't wear my struggles on my chest or on my forehead. Like, in fact, growing up as a Black person on the south side of Chicago, you're taught to do the opposite. So my mom used to say, don't let them see you cry. So when we were homeless sometime, what I do, go to school and pretend like you got a home to go to. We would go to the point of getting off the bus stop at our old house, pretending we still lived there so that other kids didn't find out. And I'll never forget, one of my college football teammates was like, Harper, like, why are you always talking about social justice and injustice for Black people? You one of the most nerdy, like, Black dudes that I know. So now, just because I'm getting good grades and I'm educated and I'm focused, I don't know the struggle. So since I don't rock around sagging my pants, looking like what you would portray a Black man should look like who comes from the struggle, since I don't fit that mold for you, I don't know the struggle. Like, that to me was an awakening, because I'm like, okay, these are all the things that I went through. This is how it translated to the success that I'm experiencing in my career. And I would end with, I encourage people to use those struggles and those challenges to fuel them in their own career and their own relationships and stuff, because even when you get that promotion, they're gonna hate on you. Even if you get good grades, they're gonna hate on you. And if the struggle is killing you, they're not gonna care. I don't even know what Leslie Redmond, what she always say. She's like, if you're silent about your oppression, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it or something like that.
That's it.
And I'm like, that's so true, because whether or not I'm successful, you'll say, I don't know the struggle. If the struggle is overcoming me and I'm fitting the status quo and not beating the odds, you're going to ignore me. Like, so damn if you do, damn if you don't. It's just another day of being a Black man in America.
Listen, because you got to understand, the time is going to pass one way or another, right? Life is going to begin and end for everybody here. So you get to decide what your experience is going to be from beginning to end. And people going to have their opinions about it, and people going to have their, whatever. They'll make their decisions about how they interact with you. But your responsibility is your level of comfort, your level of joy, and that's going to be it, man. You got to figure out how you are going to sustain, being the person that you want to be, so that life is what you would have it to be.
Right.
And that's just it, bro.
That's exactly why I would say, last thing I'll say, I think the biggest thing, the most important thing for me is integrity for that reason. Like you said, the time is going to pass. Your place is going to be here or it won't. And what did you do in that time? And I've realized that more of my mentors that leave, it's always funny. Those same stakeholders that we worked with every day who pretended that they loved that leader, as soon as they leave, everybody talking trash about them.
All of a sudden.
I'm like, so say what you want about, who was at the time a couple of my supervisors. He did what he said he was going to do, and he got us to a better place than we were. So, sometimes people aren't going to like how you do the work that you do or what you do.
Yeah.
But you can't focus on that. You got to focus on doing what you said you were going to do.
That's it. That's it exactly, man. It's all good. Listen, this is good. This is good conversation. I think that people are going to take a lot from what we talked through today. I appreciate you making the time, man. It's a lot of heavy stuff, but I think a lot of helpful stuff for folks to understand, like what's going on in the world around you. And I just appreciate you sharing that wisdom, man.
Yeah, no, thank you for thinking of me. I know you got a short list of people you putting on this podcast, and I know it's gonna blow up. So when you get to 1 million+ followers on this channel, I'm gonna look back one day and be like, I was one of the guest speakers he brought on early on, and I just hope it was useful to somebody.
Nah, absolutely, man. Early in the game, you was in here. You know what I'm saying? You was
Yes,
with me
sir.
shooting in the gym. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Didn't make one of them free throws, but I was there.
Listen, man, as we wrap up, one of the things I like to make sure I call attention to is, it's the Pancakes from Scratch podcast, right? And so at some point we got to talk about food. And for me, like, I recognize that there's this intersection between food and culture and ambition and how we become who we are. Like, I still haven't like figured out that connection, but there's something there. And then like, I'm like researching it actively. I'm having good conversations about it. But I call it the Pancakes from Scratch podcast because, you think about the process of making pancakes, overcoming something to create something, breaking eggs, putting these ingredients together that individually don't have no flavor to them, but they create something wonderful. So all that being said, you have a favorite food growing up, man? What was your favorite food? I know you was in Chicago. What you was eating, bro?
Man, my favorite food, like out of Chicago, an Italian beef. Fire. And I know we have Portillo's here in the Twin Cities now, but it's not the same. And people know what I mean. Like there's a Garrett's popcorn in Vegas, but it's not the same. You got to get it in Chicago, and you got to get it at one of the original locations. So either an Italian beef or, for me growing up at home, it was a pot roast. And that's not a Chicago meal, but if your mama was like my mama and she would make what she felt like cooking, then you would be happy when she took the time to make a pot roast because I just saw value in that pot roast. And if she made some real mashed potatoes, it's like, wow, my mama loved me because I know she didn't want to take 4 hours, 5 hours to make this meal.
I know she put the cheddar in the potatoes. My mom used to put the cheddar in the potatoes.
Every now and then, if she felt like it that day. Just like she'll braid our hair if she felt like it that day. I said, look, just cut my hair. I can't keep going to school based off of how my mama felt.
Man, listen, people overlook that because I've been asking that question like every episode, right? And one of the things I like to call out is like it was never really about the food's flavor, right? Like, yeah, the food tasted good, that's great. But it was the whole experience. Like you said, it's Italian beef, but you got to be in Chicago. Like you got it's Garrett's popcorn, but you got to be at one of the original locations. Right. It's not just roast beef.
Greens, but did your grandma sit in her chair and clean them greens and pull them? It's the process about them greens that make you just.
That's it, man. That is it. And I think that, it's something to be said about having an appreciation for the process and the whole experience of creating something. You know what I mean? And for you, the whole experience of creating the career that you've been able to establish, the impact that you've been able to have, the connection that you have in the community, the way that you've been able to plug people into opportunities. Like, it wasn't just that day that you made that call or sent that email. It was this whole life, right, that led to those moments. And there's some real power in that, man. I know that you are doing some incredible work that's very much appreciated and valued by the community that you're serving. So I just want to encourage you, man, keep doing your thing and like stay blessed, bro. You are doing some very, very powerful things. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for the people who will be served by the work that you're doing. Just keep going, bro.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. I know you're doing the same thing. So yeah, I'll keep being motivated by that and finding joy in that.
That's it, man. Well, good stuff. Keep doing your thing, man. I'm sure we'll talk soon. Go Mob and stay blessed.
Go Mob. Let's get it.